All right. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're calling from. And I'm your host, Frederic Robinson, and today's topic is when lockdown becomes a relationship wake-up call. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of introductions to make. I'm sure a number of you might be wondering who I am. So again, my name is Frederic Robinson. I'm a director and editor and have been working on EFT-related projects for some time now. Specifically, Sue and I have been working closely together over the last 18 months or so on a number of projects associated with EFT. As to Sue, I'm sure everyone on this webinar knows who she is, but in case you don't, Sue Johnson is a well-known psychologist, researcher, and relationship educator who has built many successful relationship education programs. And Sue is also someone who's trained mental health professionals for many years, and one of her most popular and well-known books on relationships is Hold Me Tight. Now, the format for today's Off the Cuff will be as follows. As there are many questions regarding COVID-19 and the lockdown that we are experiencing, Sue and I are going to have a off-the-cuff chat, and then afterwards we'll open the floor to questions from all of you. To do this, please use the chat function and ask your question there. And if your question is chosen, we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question and speak with Sue directly. And at all times, please make sure that you are muted unless you've been asked to speak. Also, this session is going to be recorded and made available for viewing at a later date. But other than that, I think we're all set to go. So, Sue, are you there?
I think I am.
Oh, there you are.
I'm as here as I can be on this beautiful day. It's very windy outside, but it's a lovely day. It's good to be here. This is only the second off the cuff, so it's still pretty exciting to be here. So thank you, everybody that's tuning in.
Wonderful, Sue. So here's a question for you right off the bat. Since we did this last time, what have you been doing to keep yourself sane?
Well, I'm not sure I am sane, but when I feel just overwhelmed by things, I find that I'm going out into the garden and gardening. But I was noticing yesterday, I think this situation is getting to everyone, and I was noticing that I was starting to talk to my plants. So I think I'm just not sure what that's a sign of, but one of my plants got eaten by a deer, and I was noticing that it was, I'm doing things now that I wasn't doing before this crisis, like talking to it about how, it had been eaten by a deer. I thought, this is ridiculous. But I'm doing what I'm sure other people are doing, trying to stay in touch with family and trying to turn to the things that I find rich, like reading and music. I read an amazing book, if anybody's interested, called The Book of Longings. I recommend it to everyone. It's by a woman called Susan Monk Kidd. It's incredible. So if you like it, it might upset some people. It's the story of a woman who's supposed to be the wife of Christ. It's written very respectfully. I don't think it says anything disrespectful to Christian beliefs, but it's really interesting. So that's what I've been doing. And also talking to you, thinking about what people want to hear about on this show, which, I hope people are starting to get used to what we do here and to start thinking about telling us the questions that they want us to address. So.
Absolutely. I have to ask you, how's Bindi? Because it's been a month now since you've had your new puppy.
She's okay. But she lands on my face at 7:30 in the morning and chews my nose and my ears. And it's very cute on one level, except puppies have these razor sharp teeth. So, it's all right. But just occasionally you kind of remember the days when you just woke up slowly and without these little teeth going for you. But, young beings are delightful. They aren't caught up in all kinds of worries, or they're not thinking about the future. They're just being in the present moment. And So they take us into the present moment. So she's pretty delightful.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I think I have a question that we can start with right off the bat, because this showed up in a news feed for me, and I immediately thought of, what might your response be to this? And I'm just going to try and find it here. Yeah, it was a headline that said, "It's being predicted by many psychologists, counselors, and divorce lawyers that divorces will increase following this quarantine." And immediately I wondered if that would be something that you could comment on, because I thought that was a pretty powerful but crazy headline.
Yeah. And I think, it's upsetting to read that if you're a relationship educator and you've spent your life doing research on relationships. But I think that is true. I think we are relying on, in this situation, we're cut off from a lot of our social contacts. We're relying on the people we live with in the house, that's often our partners, more and more for social support. And we need more social support because we're anxious. And so I think suddenly, when you've managed to be kind of roommates or friends and get along and put your conflicts or your issues aside, suddenly you can't do that anymore in that situation, and everything starts to melt down. And I think that is true. And I think there's some of us who are using this as a wake-up call, an opportunity to recognize our relationship and actually build it in this time. And I think there's others of us that are just caught in meltdown and hopelessness and helplessness. So I started thinking about trying to focus down on these talks on kind of things like the factors that really make a difference in relationships and the factors that trigger those kinds of meltdown conflicts, those kind of meltdown fights, where one person's often getting irritated and attacking and criticizing and getting desperately upset to be heard, and the other person's just feeling criticized and moving away and shutting everything out, including the other person. So I think what came up for me was, well, what about thinking about a couple of things that I've learned over the years from couples about the sort of beginning points of that. What are the beginning points of that? The other way of thinking about it is, what do I see couples can do after our Hold Me Tight relationship education programs, after our therapy? What do I see that couples can do that they couldn't do in the beginning? So that's kind of where I went with that.
Right.
I usually go, I spend my life doing this stuff, so I go, when you say that to me, I don't just come up with one thought. Okay.
Well, has there been anything else in this, this past month since we last spoke that's really struck you about what's going on in the world right now with people and couples?
Oh, I think what I just said, it shows up in lots of different ways. It shows up in small, funny ways. It shows up in big ways, with people reporting more domestic violence, with me trying to find a way to talk to the government of Canada about taking our Hold Me Tight online program and putting it out to people, maybe for free, and not getting an answer. They're a bit busy at the moment, I guess, but it shows up in all kinds of ways. Funny way is, this morning I read in the Globe and Mail, it showed up in the fact that in England there are 47,000 pubs. And I grew up in a pub, and it's talking about how they're all going to go bankrupt, this little article. And it's talking to the people and how they feel about that. And it's so interesting, because what people are saying is, this is disastrous for me. This is my main social group. This is the place I go to talk about my fears. This is the place I go to find people. Lots and lots of folks that don't have partners, or folks that can't turn to their partner for support. So it's showing up in lots of different ways, but I think we can pinpoint some of the things that happen in this process. We can start to be aware of some of the pivotal moments in this process and sort of have a look at them in a different way.
Well, what do you think? Shall we go out to the viewers and see if we have any questions. I do have one that's come up right
Well,
away.
actually, what I want to do first is I want to tell you the 2 pinpoints I came up with.
Oh, okay.
I was hoping you'd say, well, what are the 2 things you came up with, Sue? What I came up with was that right at the beginning, when you look at people, we don't understand the impact we have on each other because we haven't understood love. So we don't understand. And what we've learned over the last 30 years is that it's hard for us if we don't really understand how important we are to our partner, how love is an ancient wired in survival code, and that when our partner says something to us, our nervous system reverberates in a totally different way than when our neighbor talks to us or a relative talks to us, because we need our partner. Our partner's all tied in with our sense of safety. So it's hard to acknowledge the impact our partner has on us. I think sometimes we don't. People say to me, I'm mad all the time. I don't know why I'm mad. I'm mad at her all the time. Do you know why I'm mad? And I say, yeah, I think I do. I think I do know why you're mad. You're mad because you feel like she doesn't see you, or you tell yourself she doesn't care, or you can't connect with her and you feel alone, right? And he says, oh, yeah, right, that's okay. That's why I'm mad. But he goes straight to the mad. He doesn't sort of get curious about himself and acknowledge the impact she's having on him. And so he can't talk to her about that. And I think it's hard the other way. It's hard for us to acknowledge that we sometimes have negative impact on our partner. We say things with the best of intentions, and we don't understand that just because of how important we are to our partner, our words carry a weight. And we can say something that to us doesn't sound critical at all. And, and I know this in my relationship, it doesn't sound critical at all. And our partner hears it as a sort of judgment of failure, and so what I see is that when we work with people, they start to get curious about their own feelings. What just happened to me before I got real mad? Oh, I felt really hurt by that. And we know that fear is a big part of hurt, right? And oh, what scary message did I hear in there? Or to get curious about our partner. Hey, what happened just before you walked off? Somehow you walked off, and that's difficult for me when you just turn away from me. What happened there? I don't know, So I see that when couples start to feel safe together, they can get curious. So that's what came up for me.
Actually, it's really interesting. Just listening to you, Sue, there is a question that I have now for you with this, is that, when we're talking about lockdown, and, let's talk about fear for a second. And fear can crop up in many ways, but what it can also do is shut you down. So, for example, if you are now trapped at home with a partner and you're fearful of, where's the money coming from? What's the future? How do we take care of the family? How do we take care of the mortgage? And then the other partner is, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I might not have a job. I might not, there's still the same fears. But what ends up happening is, I think there's that you curl in. And I'm just wondering whether, what can you do to make sure that, as much as there's all this fear that's out there and all the concern, how can you make sure that you're not, dividing yourself with partner and your own home?
Well, you have to, first of all, you have to notice that you're sort of shutting down. And I think one of the reasons we do that is because we're not used to sharing and confiding in our partner. We maybe don't feel safe. We've never seen people do that, but so it feels like a risk. But I think also sometimes we dismiss our fears, and we somehow feel like it's weak to talk about them, which is really unfortunate, because there's nothing weak about acknowledging your human vulnerability, acknowledging it and accepting it, and taking the risk to share it with someone else. There's nothing weak about that. In fact, it's a real sign of strength. But our society hasn't really taught us that. So yeah, people shut down when they need each other the most, which is a sad thing. It's a sad thing. Anyone who works with couples, I mean, really, it breaks your heart sometimes to watch people who need each other very much and who love each other, and who, rather than taking the risk to reach for each other, they shut down their own feelings, they shut the other person out, and then they're alone. So yeah, that is what people do. That is what people do. And if you ask people, they say, well, my feelings get hurt. And we know from research on hurt feelings, believe it or not, we've done research on hurt feelings, not me personally, but psychologists, we know that what hurt feelings are basically there's anger in there, yeah, but mostly there's a lot of fear. And when you ask people about it, when they're calm and they can reflect, they say, it's a fear of not being valued, not being seen, not mattering. It's a fear of not having my voice. That's what hurt feelings come down to. Tricky part is, if we shut down, we don't even give our partner the chance to hear us.
I know this probably is oversimplifying it, but if there was one thing that a couple could do during this time to kind of make sure that you're not, closing in on yourself and shutting people out, is there something you could suggest?
Frederic, I hate one things.
Okay, no worries.
It ticks me off, okay? It's because every journalist in the world wants me to tell them the one thing that matters. There's no one thing that matters. So I'm not sure there's one thing that people can do. I think big part of it is people can be open to learning about their relationship and try to be curious about what's going on inside them in these arguments and what's going on in their softer feelings. Do they get hurt before they get mad? Do they get hurt before they walk away? And to be curious about that and accept that they get hurt just because they're human beings. And also to be curious about their partner's emotions. What happens? It's hard to do that. It's like if my husband walks away from me, I can be angry and righteous and all that, for a while. But hopefully there's a moment there where I say, what happened? What happened? And that's a good question, because it's not, why was he so mean? Or why am I so weak and vulnerable? It's like standing back and saying, what happened? So maybe that's something that we see couples can do when they learn about their relationships. They stand back, they can stand back for a moment. They can let the emotion die down and say, what happened here? What happened inside me? Can I acknowledge that and maybe even think about sharing it? You can't share it if you don't even know what it is that's happening inside of you. It really helps to name it, to say, that's so difficult for me. It's a bit scary when you say that to me, because this is why I hear. We don't even think about that. And to sort of be curious about our own emotions and our partners, and to even imagine, we know from research that, angry messages trigger fears of failure and rejection in people. And flat messages, when I turn to somebody and say, fine, that's fine, I just don't want to talk about this. Flat messages send dismissal fears, like, I can just dismiss you, I can just walk away, you really don't matter. So I'm able to desert you anytime I like. So we know about this emotional landscape. It's just that, people need to be educated about it, which is kind of hopefully what we're doing here, talking to people and learning about relationships together.
On that note, should we talk to people?
Of course, I want to talk to people.
Okay.
That's why I'm doing this. I like talking to people.
Well, I have one here that came through email, so I will read the question here. Spending more time locked down with my partner has at times helped our relationship, as with fewer distractions, we've had more time to focus on each other. However, as we are both working in schools, the new ways of delivering lessons online and messages to parents through social media has caused stress for both, as it is essentially gives my husband's affair partner access to him where we have previously been able to block her. He is under pressure from work to post videos and pictures of himself, and refusing this has meant that he is risking his job and prompting questions from other staff as to why he is not wanting to appear. It has caused huge arguments as he is feeling stuck between wanting to protect us and respect his boss's orders. This has resulted in him secretly sending a photograph of himself to appear on a video, which when I found out triggered my anxiety and made me doubt his resolve and willingness to shield us. It's been awful. He's essentially been put in the position of choosing between his marriage and his job. Do you have any advice as to how to navigate this?
Well, I think just the way this person's talking about it, I think it's amazing that they can talk about it with this kind of, we're talking about perspective here just now, and being able to stand back and look at what's happening in your relationship and what's happening inside you and imagining what's happening inside your partner. I mean, this person's doing this. I mean, obviously she's upset, but look at her. She's recognizing the position, the dilemma her partner's in. She's kind of, she can see both sides of the thing. She understands that he's caught in a dilemma. She understands that she's upset. It's actually a very good example of what we're talking about. She understands that she's upset. She understands that he's in a bind, right? And I mean, my sense is they're halfway there, because if she can write like this in this coherent, reflective way about the position they're in, she's saying what's happening, and she can answer herself about this. It's a very difficult situation, where you're caught between helping your partner feel secure and repairing your relationship after this kind of rift, and the expectations of your job. That's amazingly difficult, right?
Right.
But the fact that she can talk like this, my sense is she knows what to do here, which is to talk about it and share. And for her husband to be able to say, I'm scared to death that if I don't show up somehow, I'll lose my job, right? And I'm scared to death of failing to meet everyone's expectations at work. But I don't know what to do. Help me. Let's do this together. What shall I do? And for her to be able to say, I hear you, and I'm scared to death that if you turn up online, somehow this whole thing will start again, right? And for them to look at that together, my experience is that when partners can do that, like this lady's doing, you can find solutions. The two of you can come up with, well, it's okay if I just post this here, and when I do this, I'm doing this with your knowledge and to save my job, and what I won't do is this and thus. And I'm going to reiterate my commitment to you, and it's okay. I hear that you need to keep your job, and I believe in your commitment. We can do this together. They make a joint decision about how to handle this. But the lady sounds like she's doing brilliantly. You didn't tell me her name, but she sounds like she's doing brilliantly.
Her name was Anya.
Anya, you're doing brilliantly.
Well, in the meantime,
difficult situation. Frederic, the word that hit me when you started talking about it was when Anya said there's less distractions. It's really hitting me with this whole thing. That word, it's just a tiny little word, distraction. But before, compared to the way life was before the internet, it feels to me a lot of the time like life's just one big distraction now. We only have 2 minutes to focus on something, and something else comes in. And I think that's a real issue for relationships, period. Because relationships, the absolute requirement for any kind of good relationship is focused attention. And it's a requirement. And it's hopefully this crisis is waking us up to know that that's a requirement, and to start to take some of that time and attention back from the internet and to put it where it matters, which is on our relationships. Hopefully this virus thing is giving us a wake-up call. I don't know, because it feels like our whole world, our economy, everyone's worried about the economy. Our economy is built on, you know, being able to grab people's attention and get them to buy stuff and listen to stuff. It's a big issue for relationships, period, for our lives. This whole thing about distraction and how we can keep the richness of our world and keep our time focused on, you know, our relationships that really are the place where we thrive. They're the place where we survive and thrive. So I think that's a big issue in general.
I saw a cartoon once where it was a family at a restaurant, and the waiter's interacting with the family, and they're smiling. The family's all smiling. They're all interacting. And then there was a modern day version of it where the waiter's standing there just looking at the family, and all of them are on their phones. Look, they're not even paying attention to her. And so this idea of distraction, I mean, yes, I think anything online has become a massive distraction, because there's no, in some ways you can't get bored, because there's always something that you can draw your attention to.
Yeah.
And it takes over. And then maybe the relationship that you have even with somebody right in front of you, you're not actually taking the time to be with them because something else has come up, and that becomes more important. So it's very, I don't know, it's very difficult.
And, you know, and look at what I've been talking about here. I'm talking about people being able to stop and pause and ask themselves, you know, what's happening? What impact is my partner having on me? What impact is this fight having on me? I'm not just angry. I'm not just freezing up. My feelings are hurt. What does that mean? I'm scared of something. I'm feeling somehow shut out or not valued, right? That takes, okay, it might only take a few seconds, but that takes time and focus. And for you to imagine what's going on with your partner, what's going on with him right now in the moment before he walks away, right? That takes time. You know, everything is so fast, we just react to the moment and then go and look for another thing to have us to grab our attention.
Well, I have another question that's come in from Annie. If we can go ahead with that. Okay. I'm finding it hard to distinguish between feelings about my partner/relationship and general feelings of anxiety and lack of fulfillment from this current way of life, where I'm unemployed, not seeing friends, etc., etc. How can I tell when I am projecting those feelings into the relationships, since that's such a central part of my life right now?
That's a brilliant question. You know, that's a really good question. You know, we are all anxious right now, and with very good reason. Look at how the uncertainty in our world has just gone through the roof. We're all anxious. So I guess my sense is, I don't know if you say it's either or. How can I tell where the anxiety belongs? I think emotion's contagious, and everything just sort of moves, you know, floods in, right? And so if I'm super, super anxious, somehow that's contagious, and it sort of generalizes for the rest of my life. And then I'm more sensitive to you, and I'm more anxious about something that you say. So I think that's kind of how it works. But the solution, if you like, is still always the same from my point of view, which is, you know, if you have any kind of safety in your relationship at all, to try to be aware of what's going on in your softer feelings and to try to include your partner in that. Hopefully, the best thing about our relationships is we help each other with our vulnerabilities. That's what relationships are all about. So, you know, to be able to say, to my partner, I can't even figure out exactly what I'm anxious about right now. I'm anxious about everything. I'm anxious about whether we'll be able to pay our mortgage. You know, I'm anxious about, are you going to lose your job? You know, I've had members of my family call me recently with all those fears, right? I'm anxious, you know, I'm anxious, and then I'm anxious about us. We had that altercation at the table, and I'm wondering if you're getting fed up with just being at home with me. And, you know, and all these fears are coming up. I think just to talk about it helps. When we talk about things, it's not just the actual sharing with the other person. it's about the fact that what I've seen over the years is that when people focus their attention on these inner feelings and can name them, and so that makes them more simple and more manageable, they can name them and sort of put them together, order them. That in itself helps. And then if you can share them and your partner can manage to respond at all, you know, there's no ideal response. We don't all flood with empathy every time our partner says something to us. You know, I don't anyway. You know, so there's no ideal response. But if the partner can just listen and be there and show interest, you know, I think that's a great thing. But I think it's a good point she makes. Anxiety is in the air we breathe right now. You know, we can't go to the store without picking up our gloves and our mask. You know, we can't think about our older relative without being worried about what happens if this older relative catches this virus. You know, I have some people who are very dear to me who are in their 80s. Hey, you know, I have a husband who many years ago had a heart attack. It wasn't a big heart attack, but then I read something in the paper about how if you've had a heart attack, you're much more likely to, if you catch this virus, you're more likely to die. Well, that colors everything for me, you know. So I go out into the store and I forget to put my gloves on. And I feel like, you know, I'm going to take this virus into my house. I'm going to kill my husband. This kind of thing's happening. So anxiety is everywhere. So I don't think you can just distinguish, put them in boxes, but you can still share. And it makes us more sensitive to our cues from our partner as well. We need, the more threatening it gets out there, the more safety we need with our partner. We need more safe haven. Yeah. And that's kind of a wake-up call for us all, I think. Hey, world, no matter how strong and together and distracted we are, we need some safe haven relationships to survive and thrive. You know, that's the wake-up call here. And we know how to do them. You know, it's not like when I grew up, when I was a child, nobody knew how to, nobody even talked about relationships, for goodness sake, let alone understood the way they were structured. And, you know, we know how to do them now. So, but good questions. Maybe there's someone, is there someone who wants to take the risk of coming on camera? I love it when people actually talk to me and I can see their faces. Maybe there isn't. There was last time.
There is. Let me just check here. This question from Jessica Campos. Are you on? And feel free to ask Sue your question live.
Hey, Jessica. Maybe she doesn't. Hopefully, as we do this show, people are going to get more used to just showing up on the screen and saying, hi, Sue.
Well, I'll ask the question, and Jessica, if you do want to come on live, feel free to do so.
Okay.
The question was, how can we help ourselves as therapists with the idea that we have to come back with our own fears and be there for them as we have before?
How can we help people as therapists?
With the idea that we have to come, you know, back to work, I guess, with our own fears and be there for them just as you were before.
Oh, the only way I can ever do that is to, and this speaks to the kind of therapist I am and the kind of therapy I believe in. The only way I can do that is just to take a moment and be transparent, you know, and some little child is singing to me, hi, sweetheart. Take a moment and be transparent and say, hi, I'm aware that it's difficult to come back and to, you know, be here in the office with me. And I want to tell you that I washed my hands and we have sanitizer and we have, I'm not going to hug you and we're going to take every precaution here, but I'm aware that we're probably both anxious. So to recognize it, to just recognize it. I mean, I think we need to do that just as human beings in the world right now. You know, I was at the garden store yesterday, and this young man was talking to me, and suddenly he moved real close and leaned over me. And I was aware that suddenly I felt very awkward, you know, and I didn't know whether to say to him, hey, you know, 5 feet, 5 feet. But I didn't. Well, I just looked at him and I stepped back, you know, sort of away from him. I think he got the message, but it's a hard one. But I think just talking about it helps.
Okay, there's another one here. I'm just looking at Daria. If it's possible to mute yourself, and we'll move on to the next question that I have. And Sue, this one I think is anonymously, so I will leave it at that. But my husband and I have decided to separate recently in early April, and he is planning to move out in July. He doesn't want to talk divorce right now, but also tells me there's little to no chance for reconciliation. So I'm torn between trying to engage him in hold me tight conversations and joining him in walking away. We have a 12-year-old we told a couple of weeks ago, and my primary concern is for him.
That is so difficult. I understand that's difficult. You're in the house, you're together because you have no choice, and yet you're living with the fact that your partner has basically told you that he's leaving, that he's left. So I mean, I think of you as a bonding human being, what the impact that must have on your nervous system. You know, it's getting two messages, right? The message is he's still here, he's been your husband for a long time, and that's bringing up feelings in you, regret, longing, desire for him to change his mind perhaps, although you say your main concern is for your son. I mean, you're in a very difficult situation where you've got these messages that he's still there. On the other hand, you've got the message he's gone, and you saying to yourself, should I give up? And I hear you. That's an amazingly ambiguous situation, and our brains and our nervous systems don't do well with ambiguous situations. You're saying, I don't know whether to try and run towards him or run away. I hear you. That's really, really hard. I don't know. I mean, I think in that situation, what I encourage people to do is listen to their heart. If you really still want this relationship, I don't know if you have much to lose by turning and saying, I know you've decided to leave, but we're here in the house for another few months, and that's pretty hard on me. And I can't help but hope that we're going to have a conversation about whether there's any way back to reconnect. And maybe you'd like to read this book by this crazy woman called Hold Me Tight. You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, I don't know what you've got, what risk there is in that, really. Then at least you've listened to your own longings and tried the best you can. But you have to be willing to be hurt if he says, no, sorry, I'm already gone. You know, and maybe that is what he's saying. And then he tells you that, and then perhaps the situation isn't so ambiguous and you can do what you need to do to let go. If I was living in the same house under those circumstances, and I was really hearing that I had to give up and let go, I don't know. I think I'd have to do some things to protect myself, like certainly sleep apart, certainly keep my boundaries up, certainly limit the times of contact. I'd have to try to make the relationship clearer for me. So I think that's real difficult, you know, and it speaks to the fact that we're all in a situation where we're forced to be with certain people, and that could be good or bad, but if it's bad, that's really very difficult. And we're cut off from all the other social supports and social rituals. You know, I used to dance tango, if I could, at least 8 hours a week. 8 hours a week before all this stuff. I was standing up listening to beautiful music, tuning into somebody and moving with them for 12 minutes together, you know, and going to some other planet with that. And that's gone, and I don't know if it's ever really going to come back. It's surely for at least not a year or I don't know, right? So I'm aware there's a hole there, and you know, it's difficult. You know, I have to somehow try to fill that hole with what's happening in my home, you know. And so I play with my puppy, you know. I do talk to my husband more, and we have had more fights. So it's a double-edged sword, but that's a very difficult situation to be in.
I have another question that came in over email. This one's from Maxine. It says, my husband and I are both working from home now. I constantly want to do more connecting activities, like discussing how we're doing with the 7 conversations from Hold Me Tight. We read the book together, or we read the book together last year. He is not as interested. I want to watch movies together and discuss after. He'd rather do his own activities, which I can respect. When I bring up having conversations about how our relationship is going, his body language gets tight, arms crossed, and he says he can try it, but it's like his smile stops and his voice gets serious. Is it wrong to feel a bit sad that he hasn't once initiated any sort of activity or time that allows us to focus on the relationship and reflect on how we can connect more?
Oh, that is such a beautiful question, because look at what you just said. Is it wrong? Is it wrong? And I think this is what I was trying to talk about at the beginning of this episode. We need to be aware of our inner emotions in these you know, interactions with other people, to be aware of the impact of what's going on us, right? And one of the places we go is, when we try to do that, one of the places we go is, I shouldn't feel this way. There's something wrong with me that I feel this way. Maybe I'm weak for feeling this way. Is it wrong? I probably shouldn't feel this way. And we judge ourselves. And then, of course, we don't explore further. We don't really do anything with that emotion besides try to hold it off, which doesn't work very well. And we certainly can't make it clear and then share it with our partner. That's too difficult. So that's one of the first steps that I see couples where they get stuck, right? But you're aware of what's going on, and you're saying, I feel sad, I feel regret, I feel like it's such a shame that I want my partner to want to spend time with me. He can do his activities, but I want him to spend time with me so that I know I'm important to him. And yeah, those feelings are amazingly valid, right? They're amazingly valid. They're survival messages from your nervous system, and those feelings are valid. And then you say, is there something wrong with me? And that's one of the ways we shut ourselves down. Is there something wrong with me? I shouldn't feel this way. You feel what you feel. It makes sense to me. You've said it beautifully. It's not like you're caught all numb or caught all angry or somehow off balance. You're saying it in a balanced way. I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I don't think there's anything wrong with the way you feel. I think a lot of the times we doubt ourselves because of the messages we've been given about, you know, don't rock the boat, be nice and you'll be loved, or, you know, don't feel hurt because it means you're weak and people won't like that. I've had men say to me, I don't want to look at this and feel this because I'll be a burden if I feel this, you know, or I'll be, you know, I won't be Mr. Problem Solver, you know, I'll somehow admitting that I don't know what to do always. You know, then we doubt ourselves. And when we doubt ourselves, we can't even begin to be clear about what we feel or to talk to our partner. And we just sort of dance automatically together. And usually that goes wrong. So I think, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with how you feel. And I'm wondering what it would look like for you to turn and say to your husband, no, I noticed that when I start to talk about spending time together or talking about a relationship, you kind of look irritated, or you kind of put your arms across your chest. And somehow that's really hard for me. The message I get is that somehow you want me to leave you alone, that it's not important for you to be with me. And that makes me feel really sad. I'm really asking for us to spend some time together. And that makes me feel sad. You know, that's, for you to turn and say something like that is an invitation to him. And we're talking here about understanding the impact that's going on with you in when you're disconnected from your partner, but also understanding what's going on with them. You know, I'd be real curious if you said something like that to him in the soft voice, the way I did it. It's an invitation. I'd be real curious. What happens to him if he turns you down? What's happening with him? Is he scared that that conversation is going to go into, he's not open enough, he's not present enough, he's not hold me tight enough? Maybe he's angry at having to read the Hold Me Tight book. He can get angry with me. How about him getting angry with me? I've been confronted in public by people walking up to me and saying, you wrote that book and now I have to read it every night with my partner. It's all your fault. You know, so you know, oh, right. But I'm not going to apologize for that book. But you know, yeah, some people, maybe what's going on with him that he crosses his arms? Maybe he hears you that he's going to be asked to do something he doesn't quite know how to do. I don't know. But no, there's nothing wrong with how you feel.
So I hate to do this, but can we go back out to Jessica? She had to step out of the room, so she missed what you said.
Oh,
Jessica, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Sue. I'm so nervous, but I try to get with my question. It's been 3 months now that I am doing online sessions, and I wonder with what can I do with my fears. You know, I have to come back and give the attention that I was used to give with my clients, and now I feel so guilty because I don't want to go and they ask me to go. You know, it's hard.
Oh, Jessica, I don't know. If I was with you, I'd want to put my hand on your arm when you say that. I don't think you need to feel guilty. It's so human to be worried and scared. You know, it's so human. I mean, it's human to be able to say to them, I'm here with you. And I'm on the one hand, I'm glad I'm here. And on the other hand, I'm worried about being here, that I could make you sick or you could make me sick. This is a very worrying time. I think it's just fine to say that, and I'm sure they feel the same. And when you share that, they'll be able to say, yeah, that's very worrying. I mean, it's an irony. I'm here, we're talking about relationships and how to make them thrive and how to use them in this situation. But the irony here is that the fact is that relationships have just become more dangerous.
Yes.
So as if we needed a virus. You know, I spend my time, most of the time before this epidemic, talking about how the virus we need to be scared of is called social isolation and social disconnection. That's the virus that we need to be scared of. And suddenly, here we are in a situation where there's a biological virus, and suddenly relationships on the one hand are even more dangerous, right? But hopefully not our closest ones, hopefully not if we'd obeyed the rules. But I think it's very human for you to feel that way and to be able to say to them, I'm a little anxious here. I'm sure you're a little anxious too. Going out into the world, we're going to relax these rules that have kept us safe so far, or some of us safe at least, many of us safe, and that's anxiety producing. So I don't see anything wrong with sharing that. Does that help
Okay.
you?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Sue. Love you. I feel that your words touch me, and I think I'm going to do that. You know, I'm not strong now, and I can do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. You know, I think if many of us grew up being taught not to share, not to be curious about other people's emotions, not to be curious about our own, and not to share, and especially not to share, not to dwell on them and not to share. And really what I'm trying to get across to people from all our work with couples and families and individuals, all our research and all this new research on the nature of love and who we are, is that that's yeah, in some situations that works, but for us as human beings in general, that way of being really doesn't work. It really doesn't work. We need to feel connected. So I don't know, Frederic, do you have other questions? I think we're nearly out of time. Yeah.
I've got one more. I'm just checking here. Yep, I've got one more here from Cynthia. It's a new relationship question. She says, I've been in a couple of relationships with very closed off men. Now in my new relationship, my partner is so open and vulnerable. It's kind of freaking me out. I'm really thrilled with this person, but it feels so foreign to me. Any comments?
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. The comment is, yeah, I can understand that. Anything new, you know, even if it's sort of positive, part of us says, really, really, is this really? Are you sure? Just I don't know. How does this work? This is foreign territory. So yeah, when you have a partner who's open to you, suddenly that's a whole different kind of dance. It's kind of like we always want to go with what we know. You know, that's just who we are as human beings. We go with what we know. And so anything that sort of feels alien to us brings up some anxieties. And that's natural. But somehow just the tone of your question is kind of freaking me out, kind of. But you started off by saying that you'd been with lots of distant relationships. So my sense is that it might be freaking part of you out, but there's another part of you that knows that this is a more whole and satisfying way to dance together, being, you know, with somebody who's open with you, who's willing to risk being open with you. I wonder what's freaking you out. Maybe I'm putting myself in that situation. Maybe what might be freaking you out is you feel that you have to be open too. And, you know, that does freak us out, because we know that on one level that's a bit of a risk. So this person comes out and is very open with us. Actually, I can remember this when I first met my husband. I met him and he was very open and I liked it. And my two most precious girlfriends sat me down and told me that that they didn't trust him because he was so open. And that he was really, really dangerous. And I just went with my own gut, which was, I like the openness, but there is a challenge in there, because it meant that if I wanted to meet him, I had to be open too. And that's a different kind of relationship. It opens the door to so much connection and positivity, but, you know, we want closeness and connection, and we don't. We want closeness and connection without any risk, right? Without any emotional risk, and there's no such thing. And, you know, unless you go into sort of weird infatuation, and even then there's a risk of hurt. So yeah, I can hear you that it's freaking you out, and good luck with it, and I hope you stay there, and I hope he stays open, and you can have a glorious adventure together.
Thank you.
Wonderful questions. I love the questions. People, Frederic, we need to spend less time talking to me and more time talking to these people, because The questions are great. I don't know if we have any more.
I've got one more for you, and I think this will be the final one.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. My husband and I are new parents, and we are feeling disconnected. I started the epidemic feeling sincerely like there is no one I'd rather be doing this with, and over time I found myself stewing in the past hurts in our relationship as well as my personal past, which has activated some big feelings of shame, anxiety, and anger. And so much of it gets projected onto my husband. It's like I'm constantly seeing him in a negative light. I have more perspective now as I'm writing this than I did when I'm seeing him negatively. And he's been so loving, holding me at night when I'm contending with big feelings. But I find myself pushing him away and then pulling him close, protesting all the time. He's expressed that he feels tension and anxiety because he's not sure which me, in quotes, he's going to find. He's a withdrawer who is working long hours. He's an introvert and needs his recharge time. And with the new baby, it's like in some ways we are constantly on top of one another, but in others, it's like we are in different worlds. All of my feelings cause me to feel as though I'm losing my safe haven, which feels devastating. It feels sad to me that I look at my person sometimes and he feels like a threat to me and he feels like a threat to me and me to him.
Yes.
Awful, and I miss our bond. Do you have any advice?
Yes, I understand. I understand. And you're in the middle of an epidemic, and you've got a new baby, and often we don't talk about this in our society, that so many women, when they have babies, they have sort of, they go into all kinds of emotions. It evokes all kinds of emotions to have this little person that you're completely responsible for and that is so vulnerable. It reminds you of your own vulnerability. And lots of women then go off and go into postpartum depression. And we don't talk about that hardly at all in our society. We hang on to this myth that motherhood is just somehow sort of joyful and magical. And we don't look at this reality that it does bring up lots of feelings in people. So I understand that this is difficult for you, but it sounds like just the way you're talking about it, that you have a handle on it, that you're recognizing what's going on, and the fact that you can recognize that things are coming up from your past and that they somehow get stuck onto your present relationship. And you can recognize that and talk about it. And that you're saying that he's an introvert, but that he's trying to be there for you. I think that's very positive. Maybe it'd be interesting for you to look. I don't know if you've read Hold Me Tight. That might be interesting for you, but that's very positive. I just encourage you to keep talking to him about that, to say, I know that what's happening, I feel overwhelmed sometimes. I've got the baby, there's this crisis. We're together all the time. I know that I'm maybe being difficult some of the time and I'm caught up in my feelings and I'm not being fair to you, or it's hard to empathize with you. I know that. And I'm sorry that's happening, but I really appreciate you being willing to stand with me, even though I'm kind of losing my balance a bit. I really appreciate you being able to stand with me and help me with this, because I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose what we've got. I mean, I think all I've really done is expand a bit what you said. So if you can talk to him about that, I think you guys will be just fine. Just fine. If we recognize the impact our partner has on us and we can kind of name it and be aware of it, and that even helps us calm down, but it helps us think about sharing it. And if we can begin to recognize, which you're doing brilliantly, the impact that we have on our partner sometimes, where we're very sensitive and we see our partner as the enemy when really they're not, and we can even ask them about how they feel. That right there is one of the ways of preventing the relationship going into meltdown, and is a way of growing your relationship, so that it's not this epidemic is not a time of meltdown in relationships. It's also a time of opportunity. But right there, that's what we've talked about, and the questions have been great. They've really spoken to what we're talking about. So I thank everybody for that and for being part of this and for talking to me.
Well, I certainly thank you, Sue, for taking the time to do this today, and certainly thank everyone who's on this webinar. I'm with Sue. The questions were fantastic, and it was great to be able to connect with you, Sue, and get your thoughts as well. So there are a number of resources that anyone on this webinar will have access to. I'm actually going to, on the replay after the recording, there will be a list of these resources. So at the very end of the video, you'll be able to have access to that. So I will, we'll endeavor to get that out as soon as we can. Sue, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to give?
Oh, good Lord, I don't know. Final thoughts. My final thought is always the same. Do what's best for you. Take care of your precious relationships.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And again, I will we'll have this up so that you can watch it again. And we'll see you when we produce the next one, which we will. We don't have a set date yet, but as soon as we do, we will post that and let you know when it's happening. So thank you very much, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.